Russian opposition leader Alexey Navalny is ending his prison hunger strike after more than 3 weeks of fasting. He's been in jail since returning to Russia from Germany, where he received medical care for being poisoned. Navalny's strike was centered on a demand for medical care from his personal doctor rather than prison doctors. That demand was not met, but doctors not affiliated with the prison were allowed to examine him. They warned Navalny if he continued his fast after 24 days, he could die. CBS News foreign correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins me now with more. Hi, Charlie. So this news comes after pro-Navalny protests across Russia Wednesday, showed some sympathy, even some sympathy hunger strikes. What was the exact, how did the events unfold?
Yes, Tanya, the Russian government, the Russian police said explicitly anybody who came out to protest, that would be seen as a threat against the state. It's as bold as can possibly be. If you do come out, you may be arrested. And there were, even the police say, 1,000 arrests. Opposition members say there were 2,000 arrests. But thousands of people defied Russian government orders to stay off the streets in order to protest on behalf of Navalny. The numbers are always lower as far as the Russian state is concerned, but certainly opposition say tens of thousands of people, not just in Moscow, but across the country. And in addition to that, some people were taking part and had started taking part in hunger strikes in support of Alexey Navalny.
So, of course, he's well known now, Alexey Navalny, but help our viewers understand what he has actually done to shine a light on Russian President Vladimir Putin and make himself an enemy of the state. And how is he regarded there in Russia, among people who might support him, might not support him, and who falls into which category?
Well, I think we have to make clear that President Putin himself refuses to even utter his name. He calls him that blogger. But he has clearly been a thorn in the side of President Putin and the Kremlin. And what he's been doing is trying to run this anti-corruption campaign. And he's not alone. He's got thousands, tens of thousands of followers who are behind him. And it is a brave move standing up to President Putin. So what has happened in the summer of 2020, Navalny collapsed on a flight. This is an internal flight, a domestic flight, as it were, going to Siberia. He collapsed. He was treated by Russian doctors, and then he was airlifted out to Berlin, to Germany, in order to be treated. There, they determined that he was poisoned with the Russian chemical agent Novichok, and he was lucky to survive by any measure. That's how all of the doctors have been describing it. Despite that, he decided that he wanted to return to Russia. And the moment that he did, he was arrested essentially just after he touched down, moments after that. And he's been in jail ever since. Now, he went on a hunger strike in March because, as you said, he was protesting the fact that he had been suffering. He had kidney issues. He had stiffness in his limbs and in his back and his lower back. But it wasn't until his doctors, his personal doctors, were able to see the blood test that was taken last week that said he is in real danger of dying. We were looking at possible heart failure, possible kidney failure, which of course would have been aggravated by his hunger strike. So when he went to this, what he calls a civilian hospital, it's still a hospital for prisoners, but it's not the prison hospital. They determined, look, his doctors said, private doctors, not his doctors, but civilian physicians said, if you keep this up, there's not going to be much left. And we're talking about a matter of days. So he was talked into, maybe ending his hunger strike. This is a slow process. It's dangerous coming out of such a harsh hunger strike. But he really had no choice. But his feeling wasn't that he was giving up the protest because he had to for his health, but he was giving it up because he finally got to see physicians that weren't the prison physicians. So he's by no means out of the woods. Supporters say that his life is in danger every day that he's in a Russian prison. But there will be repercussions. You've heard it from the United States and from European leaders if Navalny should die in prison.
And so, yes, what has the reaction been then from the international community, including the U.S., who've been watching closely to see how Russia is treating Navalny? Because we know, certainly it's not outside of their toolbox to deal with, government opposition leaders very harshly. What makes the treatment of Navalny different than what we've seen before?
Well, I think one thing that makes it different is there is a spotlight on him. Even in prison, he's been able to post via his lawyers on Instagram. There's so much attention, enough attention that, the Biden administration has threatened Putin that there would be repercussions, not describing what those repercussions might be, but in the past they've been sanctions. So there have been opposition figures in the past who have been poisoned and who have been assassinated. Navalny himself told Leslie Stahl, 60 Minutes Leslie Stahl, he put the blame directly on President Putin for this assassination attempt. So there could not be an opposition leader more under the skin of President Putin. Although I have to be honest with you, this isn't a sort of widespread popularity supporting Navalny and President Putin. If the two men were to stand in a free and fair election, he would be crushed. Navalny would be crushed. So he doesn't have this widespread, countrywide, nationwide support. He's simply trying to not unseat President Putin. Well, he would like to see that happen. He's already said it. But he's trying to expose the mass corruption in the Kremlin, the mass corruption for President Putin. And while he's still doing that, while he still has a voice, while you and I are speaking about it, while the Biden administration is considering sanctions, while European leaders are considering sanctions, this is going to be a thorn in the side of President Putin. And again, he's serving a 2-year prison sentence. Health-wise, he's not out of the woods, and his supporters now are still in fear of his life.
But is there a sign that his message is resonating? As you pointed out, Charlie, obviously, if it was a popularity contest, Putin would win. But just in terms of getting that anti-corruption message out, is it resonating? Is it growing at all?
Well, Tanya, I've been to Russia so many times, and even people that support President Putin in the Kremlin say, well, of course they're corrupt. It's a cynical society, so they're willing to accept a level of corruption. You can see how extraordinarily wealthy President Putin and the people around him and the oligarchs that support him are. So they're willing to accept a certain amount of that. But they also want a strong leader. And Navalny doesn't necessarily represent that. He represents a disruptor, and there could be changes. But President Putin has really not given into the threat of sanctions from the United States or Europe. And I can't imagine this is going to be any different. But, Navalny isn't going away. And within Russia, yes, there is growing support that, enough is enough.
Right. All right. Well, Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanya.